Hi football fans, my name is Cillian O'Grady, the Irish Flying Canary and long-time Norwich City fan. Welcome to the 5th edition of the Beyond the Barclay podcast, focused on travelling supporters, O'Grady Away Days. In this episode we'll focus on Middlesbrough and specifically the Riverside Stadium. For many Norwich fans who've been at any of the last few away matches, the football has certainly tried to get in the way of enjoying the various cities and towns we visited. With the news that Norwich are now in the market for a new head coach, hopefully fans will travel to Middlesbrough this week with a renewed enthusiasm. This podcast will hopefully give you an insight into getting to the Riverside and back home safely and experiencing what Teesside has to offer. Given that this is Boro's last home game of the season and that they still have a playoff spot in their line of sight, it should make for a great atmosphere. There are probably not too many fans going to fly to the match unless some of the other international Canaries or Boro fans are planning the trip. I'll be flying into Newcastle and then catching a train to Middlesbrough. I've enjoyed my visits to Boro greatly over the last few years and look forward to this one also. Of course, I'm no expert on Middlesbrough, so I'm delighted to be joined by two very special guests on the show who can no doubt give us a much better insight. I'm delighted to be joined by London resident but Middlesbrough native, the man behind the North East Canaries, regular contributor to the Where Canaries Walk podcast and Super Norwich fan Matty Sokol, and top Borough fan and host of the Borough Breakdown podcast Tom Green. You're both very welcome to the show.
Cheers, thanks for having us.
Cheers for having us.
Maybe, Tom, you could start with you and tell us about your journey becoming a Middlesbrough fan.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a choice. It's my dad's team, his dad's team. It's ran in the family. By about 2 or 3 years old, running around in the garden with my shirt over my head saying I was Ravanelli. Never saw Ravanelli play for Boro, but I knew Ravanelli was, played for us at the time, and I knew that was a celebration. Someone must have told me that was a celebration. I think one of my earliest memories is actually watching us beat Oxford.
Okay.
Well, I say watching us. We had it on in my grandma and granddad's house. I was out in the garden in my Mark Schwarzer goalkeeper top, throwing a ball around and trying to catch it in my tiny net at the time, and then kept running back in to see what the score was. But yeah, it's been since a very, very early age that I've supported Boro, and I think the first game I remember was like the JD Sports Cup or something in '98, and then kind of gone from there.
Brilliant. And Matty, how did you not end up a Borough fan, but a Norwich fan instead?
But like Tom says, I suppose it's my dad's fault. My first actual game was at Victoria Park to watch Hartlepool versus Scarborough. I was 3 years old, and I don't really remember a great deal of it. My first Norwich game wasn't far after that. Was to see us lose at Main Road, Man City's old ground. And yeah, when I was properly getting into football, sort of 5 or 6, or maybe a tiny bit older, my dad, a Norwich fan. He says he gave me the option. I don't really remember it, to be honest. You don't remember a great deal from that age, do you? But he said he would sort of swallow his pride and get me a Middlesbrough season ticket. And apparently I was having none of it. And, at 30-year-old now, I'm still travelling around the country and, I was going to say wasting my money, but spending my money on days out with yourself and the other regulars, Cillian. So yeah, it would have been a lot easier to have supported Middlesbrough. I could have had a season ticket at a ground a few miles from where I grew up, but as it happens, I've made life a bit more difficult for myself. Tom, I've got a quick question. Obviously, I've played football with you a few times. Was it Mark Schwarzer that was the influence behind you wanting to be a goalkeeper?
Yeah, probably. Definitely my favourite goalkeeper for Boro, although we've had a few good ones since then. Shea Given on loan. I still remember his loan spell, even though it was about 8 to 10 games long. But yeah, probably Mark Schwarzer is the one I remember for like nearly 10 years, if not around that.
Is he any good in goal, man?
Tom?
Tom, yeah.
Do you know what? I've played with Tom 5-a-side, 7-a-side, 11. I've played a couple of different games.
You don't fancy a kick about in the Riverside then on Saturday, Dom, do you?
I tell you what, the way that we've been playing, I think I'd rather have Tom in goal or George Long, and I'd fancy myself getting a start in the 11 the way the Norwich have been playing, but I think we'll leave that there, I reckon.
Indeed. So talk about getting to the game then. I mean, what's your journey like, Matty, for a game like this?
In this particular instance, obviously you mentioned I live in London now, but I do still have a place up there, so I'm going back home. I'll be seeing the family and seeing folks and whatnot, but in terms of the actual day itself, it'll definitely involve a trip to to the pub around about lunchtime. I know we're meeting up and having a bit of a drink and hopefully some food at the chairman beforehand, which would be really nice. And it's a quick Uber in for me, or a train. I live not too far from Martin train stations. It's 6 and 2 3s really. It's not too far in. It's 5 or 10 minutes either way. Have a method of transport, and then once you're in the town, it's it's not huge. It's not a huge town, is it? So it's not too far to walk from either the train station or from wherever you get dropped off. So yeah, fairly simple for me, to be honest. Unlike your Oxfords away, where the ground's miles and miles away from the pubs and stuff. This one's not too bad.
What about you, Tom? How will you get there?
It sounds like a lot less travelling than Matty's journey. I'll be setting off from my house in Hartlepool, heading over to the ground, probably park at the ground, and then I'll be meeting my family in the concourse. We do kind of have a tradition where we've got the same spot in the concourse, and we've had it for ages. And we will go and get our pints because we're on a tier of season ticket because we renewed in a certain year. We get a free pint with our season ticket.
Wow.
So we go in, we get our pints, we stand in our spot, and just kind of wait to go up to the stands. I suppose sometimes it can be as early as like 2:30 going up to warm-ups. Other times it's just before kick-off.
You mentioned parking there. For playing Norwich fans or anybody travelling who's driving, where typically should they park?
So where I would recommend is the car park at Middlesbrough College. It's not too far away from the ground. It's £4, I believe. The advantage there is it's a closed off car park. There's people watching the car park. I used to park in the car park near the Transporter Bridge where you can pay on like Ringo and stuff like that. I have heard a couple of bad things about it in the last couple of seasons where people's cars have been kind of smashed up in some cases when they've left them in that car park, so I stopped parking there. Other car parks I would recommend are kind of like the shopping centre ones, so the likes of like the Cleveland Centre. Again, you pay for them, but you know your car's secure.
Matty, anything to add to that, or would you concur with that?
No, definitely concur. The Middlesbrough College one's a good shout. Another place that Tom and I have played football over the years. But in terms of it being near to the ground, it really isn't too bad. You've got like a 5-10 minute max walk, depending on how fast or how slow you walk. And it's not too difficult to get onto main transport links like the A19 and the A66. So it's pretty good location in terms of, a walk to and from the ground, and it being safe, as Tom says, which I appreciate is a big issue. There's been a few hairy occasions on away days. I know Birmingham's quite bad for people parking cars and getting them smashed up, and I've never seen any or heard of any bother at Middlesbrough. And it's, when you've got the added bonus of it being secure, like Tom says, then that's a green light for me.
That's great, Chet. And you also both mentioned having a pint. Is there any? Let's start with away pubs. Is there any pub that you'd recommend for away fans to go to?
What was that one on the corner near the cinema? Is that closed now?
Doc Brown's you're thinking of?
Is that
because I was thinking the same thing. I also couldn't remember if that was closed now. I know that was quite welcoming to away fans in recent years. If it is closed, it's a shame. On that, yeah, I'd always be kind of quite selective about where I would drink around Boro as an away fan, because I know there are certain pubs like Navigation or the Pig Iron and stuff where you probably want to avoid because they are like home pubs.
Yeah.
If that recent, I was back up at home a few weeks ago, and for the first time I saw, is it Stack? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Which is a bit like for other people that are not as familiar. There was one in Newcastle not long ago, but it's a little bit like Box Park, but a smaller version of. That might be a decent shout, I suppose, Cillian, because I don't know, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. Do they allow away fans? Are you allowed to mill around for a couple of hours beforehand for a drink and a burger or something?
I'd imagine so. I mean, I've never been to Stack myself, but I know it is fairly close to the ground, and with it being a kind of similar thing to Box Park, I'd imagine they would be quite welcoming for away fans there. I seem to remember like away fans kind of being a little bit further up that street, going to Honky Tonk, I think. I think I've heard about away fans being there, and I mean, Middlesbrough has a fan zone outside. It's kind of like another Box Park version, although much smaller. Anytime I've walked through that, it has been pretty much a sea of red shirts. However, it's more of like a family area, so I don't imagine if you go in there with a Norwich shirt on, there's going to be any trouble. It's in front of the Ayresome Park gates.
Very good. That's good to hear. And what about for home fans? Where do they normally congregate and go to?
Home fans, like I mentioned, Guyan, the navigation, the fan zone that's outside, like I say, is usually full of home fans. I suppose it just depends where in Middlesbrough or Teesside you're coming from, but I would say kind of anywhere close to the ground. What's the one called? Hit the Bar. I think is usually full of home fans as well. So not a lot of places I would go and frequently go before a match, but yeah, I would say the closer you get to the ground, the more likely it's going to be that it'll be a home pub.
And what about then food? If you're hungry, where would you recommend around Middlesbrough? And what would you
Depends what.
Is that a stupid question?
It depends what you're looking for, because if you're looking in terms of just your kind of standard football food and the vans around the ground, there is a van closest to the club car park. I believe it's outside the east stand. Honestly, unreal as a van. I had chicken curry and chips from there last week. Absolutely amazing. Could not recommend it enough. Previously, I've had meat, chips, and gravy from there, which is like beef or pork with chips, gravy, stuffing. £6.50 or £7. Depending on what
Value,
what
that,
the
isn't it?
price is, like fantastic value. Honestly, both those things are from the same van.
Look out for the big queue.
I'd say it's like an underrated gem, you know. We've spoken about it on our podcast a few times because it was actually Johnny and Dana that got me into going there. But yeah, they're kind of really big fans of that, and it's grown on me as well. But yeah, in terms of food, kind of more central Middlesbrough. I mean, for any Norwich fan coming up wanting to try the local delicacy, Manjaro's is right there if you want to go and get a chicken parmo. I'm sure anywhere else will do a chicken parmo as well, but Manjaro's is the recommended one, I would say.
Probably not, isn't there? I don't know what Central Park's Parmo's like these days. Do O'Connell's allow fans in? Because I know that Parmo's quite highly rated as well. O'Connell's,
yeah. So I'm unsure about like Bedford Street and Baker Street in terms of are they going to be home friendly or allowing away fans, but I feel like the type of place those two streets are, and Matty, you might know this as well. I don't feel like the type of place that you would have any trouble. It's just kind of very kind of like hipster bars, isn't it? So
each fan really shouldn't go home without trying a parmo. In fairness,
no, I dare say it's something that you should try, I guess, once in your life. And if you like it. With it, I guess.
You know what? I was actually watching a Plymouth fans YouTube video last week from their trip up. They were setting off at like 2:30 in the morning, and then they had a whole section at the start of the podcast going, "We're at Manjaro's. We're going to try a parmesan." Like, yeah, you kind of have to if you come to Boro, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember seeing the Bristol City Twitter admin a couple of years ago asking everyone, should we get hot shots, should we get... And it kind of... And obviously they were at Manjaro's there, and that got loads of traction online. I think, as Tom mentions, Manjaro's is quite a well-known establishment for quality parmos.
A treasure hunt with a stop in Manjaro. And just then about the Riverside Stadium itself and the atmosphere pre-match, what's it like around there?
It depends on the importance of the game, I think. And going into the game on Saturday, I feel like it's a little bit split after our results yesterday. Red Faction, who occupy the South Stand, they might have some sort of display on. I think, if I'm remembering right, I have seen something being circulated saying it's like a retro shirt day. I think it was Red Faction that put it around, but they're trying to encourage everyone to turn up in a retro shirt. That might add a little bit in terms of atmosphere. If Red Faction have any sort of like display, because we get like tifos and stuff in the South Stand, that usually adds to the pre-match atmosphere a little bit. But it's either going to be, if people are kind of seeing it as a really important game, which it is, and it's obviously the last game of the season, you might get a lot more people in the stands pre-match than we usually would. Or it could just be that if people have just kind of like lost faith a little bit after yesterday and aren't too excited, it might just be a normal match day, in which case you'll see streams of people coming up at like 10-2, 5-2, and then 5 past as well once the queues at the bar subside.
Very good. And what sort of chants should the Norwich fans be listening out for? What do they hear?
We haven't got too many memorable ones this year. Red Faction have their own songbook. The Norwich fans will be kind of closest to Red Faction, so you might be kind of serenaded with everything from that songbook at the moment. But it's one of those things where like they have their own chants and they try and start them, but I don't feel like they circulate too much around the stadium. What I will say as well, they've got a drummer, so you'll have to put up with like a constant drum beat throughout the match as well. But yeah, I think in terms of chants around the stadium, we haven't got too many catchy ones this year, whereas in previous years we've had like All Wilder Said and some Michael Carrick one. I mean, that only really lasted until we sold Tuba Rakpon, but yeah, I think when the fans get going, it's just going to be like a Come On Boro or something. Like I said, there's not too many original catchy songs this year, unfortunately.
What, Matty, do you think the Boro fans might hear from the Norwich fans?
Well, I mean, who knows now with that news of the sacking of Hoftorra? There was a couple that were Hoftorra specific, weren't there? And it was, Cordoba's. Well, I mean, I think I put on Twitter the other day that the song I came up with for Cordoba's actually probably been better than his actual performances. So he has one, doesn't he? And you've got the likes of the Nunes chant and the Sargent one is a good one. I'm guessing he'll start. So yeah, looks good, looks fine. Sargent on my mind, which I know every club sings a variant of as well. And of course, everyone knows On the Ball City, oldest football song in the world that is the Norwich City anthem. So I think you ask most certainly Championship home fans who have played Norwich in recent years, they'll be very familiar with On the Ball City. So yeah, those are the main ones that spring to mind, I guess. And like Tom says, there's the monotonous Come On Borough, there's the monotonous Come On City or whatever. Everyone's again got that generic insert club name as well. So
yeah, I seem to remember last year the Borough drummer gave us plenty of inspiration for chanting at him and abusing him. If anybody wanted to meet the players, what's the opportunity like in Middlesbrough for both home and away fans?
I would say kind of waiting around outside the West Stand before and after the game. It's quite early in terms of when they would get there. So I'd be saying between 1 and half 1. I used to actually sell fanzines not too far from that car park, so I did kind of see the players rocking up in their fancy cars just after 1 o'clock. So a lot of people tend to get photos and autographs when the players are turning up. Seen a fair few away buses turn up around that time as well, so probably say between 12:30 and 1:30 be waiting around that car park, and then straight after the game make your way around there. I couldn't say for sure, but I've had a couple of times when I've been selling fanzines and someone's turned up, and I saw one game I remember was Bolton, and they were like, they're staying in the Thistle Hotel. They were walking around Boro this morning. We managed to kind of have a word with a few of them. It was just like 18 people wearing Bolton Wanderers tracksuits wandering around the streets. If you're there early and you're staying in Boro, you might see, some Norwich players going for a walk or something. See, each club's different in that respect.
Talking about staying, so people want. I mean, it's a fair trip up from Norwich for somebody that might want to stay overnight. Any recommendations on whereabouts in Middlesbrough to stay?
So I'd say we've got it's a travel lodge. No, I don't think it is. Holiday Inn, I think, built into the shopping centre. We've obviously got what was the Thistle Hotel. I don't remember what that's called now. I think it's like a Leonardo Hotel, maybe.
I think there is. You mentioned Travelodge. I think there is a Travelodge and a fairly new Premier Inn, all sort of within the definitely a Premier Inn near that Leonardo's. That's on that corner, and I think there's the as you mentioned that Holiday Inn is pretty good value, I've heard as well, and it's in a decent location as well. I know you stayed there before, haven't you, Cillian? I think that
Holiday Inn I've stayed a few times and I'm staying there again this year. It's a good spot, very central.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
I was going to say, if anyone's looking for like a more upmarket hotel, there's a Hilton Hotel in Stockton, not too far away from Middlesbrough, and your public transport to the game from there in terms of like trains and buses isn't too bad. Probably take about 20-25 minutes.
If you're driving and you're not bothered about a drink, you could make it a bit more scenic and find somewhere, I don't know, somewhere sort of over Saltburn Way, or somewhere near Roseby Topping, or somewhere that's a little bit more out in the country, or that's at least a little bit further away from the town centre. But that scuppers anyone who's wanting to have a couple of beers, doesn't it, on the day of the game, if you've got to drive in, or the transport's not great, I suppose.
Have you got an Uber or Bolt or stuff like that in Middlesbrough?
Yeah, we've got Uber now.
I'm shocked. I don't know about you, Tommy. Obviously, you're closer to it on a daily basis than me, but I never thought Uber would make it to Middlesbrough, and it has.
No, me neither. I was actually only in London a couple of weeks ago for the wrestling. Actually, I remember getting Ubers whenever we wanted there, and there was so many options like boats, helicopters, and all sorts. And yeah, it's just mad to think that that's in Middlesbrough.
I believe it's coming or just has come to Norwich, because Norwich is one of the worst places to try and get any kind of a bookable taxi of any sort.
Yeah. It's a brave new world.
There you go. Outside of football, I mean, is there anywhere you'd recommend for people if they wanted to do a bit of sightseeing or touring around the Middlesbrough area, Teesside area? Is there anything you'd recommend people to see?
Oh, that's a thinker. I mean, Rosebery Topping, if you've got time, go and have a look at that, and kind of the little towns and villages around it, all kind of really scenic. And I think if there's anywhere kind of up past Middlesbrough,
I guess it depends how far up you want to go, doesn't it, Tom, I suppose?
Yeah.
The County Durham's nice, but you're talking 30, 40 minutes in a car or 30 odd by train, but that's from Darlington, isn't it? Yeah. What do you live in Hartlepool? Are you not on the Hartlepool Tourism Board, Tom? You're not giving that a big shout out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, come to Hartlepool, have a walk around Seaton Beach or Crimson Dean or something. Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing I was going to suggest would be just kind of like walks near the Tees, or there's the dinosaur park over Riverside Park, which, funnily enough, isn't named after Tony Pulis or Neil Warnock. Just a load of metal dinosaurs, but yeah, there's that as well, which is, I mean, fairly close to the ground. You could probably have a walk around that and then walk over to the ground within about an hour.
I think just
or if you drive, and it'll be about 5 minutes.
Just going off kind of Tom's event, like coastal sort of stuff as well. Like obviously you've got Hartlepool further up on the coast, but I mentioned earlier like Saltburn. Like Saltburn's a beautiful part of the world if people are up for the weekend. If you're not having to shoot off after or whatever, and you're making a bit of a trip of it, because as you mentioned, Cillian, it's a bit of a trek. Saltburn's lovely. Saltburn is very, very nice. Whitby's not no, it's an hour or so from Middlesbrough Town Centre. And then further inland, you've got, not everyone will have heard of him, but James Cook he's from Martin really, but he went to school in Great Ayton. Great Ayton's a nice little village. And as Tom's alluded to, with Rosebery Topping not far off. So there is a lot of nice scenery. Like Middlesbrough, a town itself, I'm not a massive fan of, but in terms of Teesside as a wider area, it gets a bad rep, but it's actually quite a nice part of the world in terms of 10 mile or so outside of the town centre. It gets quite scenic quite quickly. So if anyone does travel up and only see Middlesbrough Town Centre, don't judge the whole area on that, is all I would say.
And in terms of, obviously it's important for everybody travelling to football, I mean, in terms of staying safe, is there any tips or guides for people?
I mean, we tend to always have a little bit more of a police presence on a match day, going around town centre, especially close to the ground as well. I think, as Matty just said there, when you go about 5 to 10 miles away from town centre, I don't think you need to worry about that type of thing, because you'd be in a little bit more of a rural area and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's not necessarily even the type of game where I would expect there to be trouble. We've had it a couple of times in recent years where we played Derby after all the kind of legal trouble that we had with them, and obviously Sunderland or Newcastle. Things can flare up if you go the wrong way to the ground, like through the underpasses near the cinema. But I wouldn't expect that to happen with Norwich fans, to be fair. So I would just say if you're in town centre, there should be more of a police presence there, and it should make things a little bit safer than. Well, I would say than it usually is. Pretty sure Matty would agree there. A little bit more well run on a match day.
Yeah, no, and I think Tom's mentioned a couple of those pubs earlier, the Navigation and the Pig Iron. Just don't be daft, I suppose. If you're an away fan, don't go in there, because you're not going to either get in or you're going to have a few stern looks or something a bit worse. So it's common. I guess it's just general common sense, isn't it? Like, I've never seen any real trouble at Middlesbrough away games. All the years I've been subjugated to watching Norwich more often than not lose there. So hopefully it's the same. It's the same this weekend.
Yeah, we have our rivals, Matty, as you know, they're little blue neighbours down the road. Tom, are there any big rivalries for Middlesbrough? Like, what's the big team that you really want to get to the Riverside?
I think there's a bit of a split between Boro fans over who we consider our rivals. See, for me, growing up in the time that I did, it was always Newcastle. Okay. It was us and Newcastle in the Premier League. Sunderland were in the Championship or below somewhere. Like, I didn't really pay attention to them up until the point where they were in the Premier League, probably around 2000-ish. But when they came up, it was Newcastle and Sunderland. I've lived in Billingham for majority of my life, Hartlepool now. I think on that side of the Tees, there's a lot more potential to run into Sunderland and Newcastle fans. If you're going to be going to school or work, you'll meet a lot more Sunderland and Newcastle fans. But then over the other side of the river, probably starting from Thornaby down to Middlesbrough, and I think maybe over a certain age as well, I think there's a demographic of Boro fans who are like, no, we're North Yorkshire, Leeds are our rivals, and they wouldn't even acknowledge Sunderland and Newcastle. Like, to me, I'm not really that bothered about Leeds, but then I think there's still an element of rivalry with Sunderland and Newcastle for those fans, but not as much as Leeds. And like I say, I think from Thornaby onwards, you've got a lot more potential in meeting Leeds fans.
Very good. And just a final question for both of you. Just talk about some of our exports, imports between the teams. I know we've had people like Ben Gibson, but what are your thoughts on Howson?
You know what? Great player, great servant of the game. He just celebrated 750 appearances at the weekend. He got kind of presented this commemorative plaque after the Plymouth game by Steve Gibson and Michael Carrick. There's a picture on the Boro socials. It's got like his the programme from his first ever game and the programme from that game, and a shirt with 750 on the back. I think when he signed for Boro, and Matty might laugh at this as well because we were working together at the time, and you could see the type of reaction Howson was getting, firsthand in the office by some people. I think there was a certain amount of Boro fans who had seen him score a couple of screamers for Norwich and expected him to do that every week, and then kind of really soured on him in that first season. But he's played for us for ages now. He's played wherever he's been needed to play, whether that be centre mid, centre back, right back. I can't even remember if there was maybe a game where our keeper got sent off and he might have ended up in goal or something. But it wouldn't surprise me. He's been a good servant of the club, and I think although I believe he's 37 now, and I don't think he'll get another contract at the end of the season. We've had probably about the last 3 years, I think it'll get to late in the season. It's like Johnny Howson signed a 1-year extension, and everyone's just been like, great, Howson's back for another year. And there's a real demographic of Boro fans who still love him and would sign him up for next season. But yeah, I think that says everything about him, is the fact that, at 37 years old, he's still regularly playing centre-back for us in the Championship, and people want him re-signed for another year.
I think he's a lovely fella as well. I don't know if you bumped into him maybe on travels but before he was sold or whatever, but it does seem like a very genuine, down-to-earth, nice fella. I did go off him when he got, was it Borges signed sent off?
Of course, he did.
I went right off him, but I've forgiven him. And listen, we had some great years with him. He's a fantastic player. Went a bit underrated, I think, when we first got him, and then people really started to appreciate him. And like you said, Tom, people in the office when we were working together, people were a bit underwhelmed over the first 6 or 9 months or so, and then they realised actually he's absolute football gold. So yeah, he seems a nice fella. He's a good pro. He's been a very good pro wherever he's been, and it's nice to see good people like that have a real longevity in the game. So yeah, definitely the best in terms of the combination or sort of the cross-contamination of players that have played for both. Definitely the pick of them for me, Aaron.
Cheers. Listen, lads, thanks both for your insights. I'm sure many fans will get a lot of benefit from it and enjoy the game on Saturday.
Cheers.
Will do.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barclay. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoyed the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like us to cover, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the ball, City.